Googling aata hai, you all know how to Google. So it's very easy to look it up. You find all the good resources. YC is a great one. If you're just looking to create a simple deck that presents your idea, you want to create a pitch deck, there's nothing better than starting off with the YC library. Then there is, of course, like Sequoia. Sequoia has like some really great articles. So if you actually want to read about like what are the elements of a business plan, there's lots of great material out there. Beyond this, there are like a few like very famous texts and like like books. I'm happy to like put those resources up at the end. Now, a business plan, kya hota hai? It's very easy to Google it. It's very difficult to execute it. There are plenty of people from great backgrounds, from bad backgrounds, from unknown talent, from known talent who start up companies and they fail. And that's because companies mein bahut sare risk factors hote hain. It's a very risky game altogether, right? You can get so many parts of it wrong. You could misunderstand the problem. Is there even a problem? Your solution could be like not good enough. You could not be the right team, right? So like if you look at it, there's a race going on right now in like AI. There's a race going on right now in cloud. So who will win this race is really dependent on the team. Then finally, like market potential, right? Or competition. These are all aspects, where like anything can happen. Back in the days, people used to believe that, you need to, you basically have like one field and then you keep competing within it. And then like, whoever like does the lowest cost and the best number of features will win. But then actually you had, people come along and say like, you had like Christensen coming in and telling us that there's actually like an innovation angle to this, where someone can come in, they can build a new solution, and then suddenly number of people who can use it expands. So you're not stuck to this idea of competition key. There's a field and you have to stick within it. You can create new fields. So that was start of blue ocean thinking strategy, right? Then finally, there are like some like, like detail oriented parts. If you're starting a company, you need to keep a, you need to keep a thought over how much cash you're spending. It's actually the most important piece of planning you will do when you start your business, right? So how will your business work? How will you price it? How will you ask people to pay? Will it be a subscription? Will it be a paper transaction? Will it be a cut that you take from like sellers? Will it be like, just an outright like pricing game? Will it be like a freemium model? So there are lots of different ways that you can do this, right? And again, there's a lot of great resources out there that tell you what are the different kinds of business models that you have. But business models are ultimately just about what is the pricing mechanism? How will you get money for what you're selling? And how will that affect your cash flow? आप पैसा पहले ले रहे हो, बीच में ले रहे हो, installments में ले रहे हो, बाद में ले रहे हो, that can change your game. So you look at something like, okay, take like PCs and computers. There have been umpteen number of innovations in PCs and computers. First one was making it, kind of like cheap enough and small enough for many businesses to buy it. That was IBM. Then Apple came along and said, I will put a computer in every home. And that was the personalization of the computer. Then on cash flow, Dell made a very, very important innovation. Dell said, you know what, you order on my website, you tell me what you want, you pay me upfront, and then I will give you a very cheap laptop in a month or so. This upended the game entirely. Isse pehle, all of this business was very cash heavy. So you need a lot of cash to start even being in the PC business. Dell said, tum pehle mujhe batao tumhe kya chahiye, and you pay me upfront. So they changed the cash cycle. First they got the cash, then they made the laptop and they delivered it to the customer. Completely changed how the industry worked, right? So again, innovation can come from many different places and from many different like thoughts. Last, underpinning this business plan is the financial model, right? So financial model is always telling you the profit and loss, as I said, the cash flow, very important, and what are the assets and liabilities you're building in the business. The last part of it is vision. Starting your own company or building a plan is so hard and it's so vague and itna failure hota hai that you must have something that you are working towards. You will keep running into obstacles, right? One day your team will say, we are not able to sell this, change the pricing. Oh, we're not able to sell this, change the product. We're not able to sell this, change the customer. You have to keep coming back and thinking, why did I start this? Who am I helping? How does this make sense? And that's what a vision is, right? A vision is something that like the world will be like this. This will work. And you, anytime you run into a problem, you come back and say, okay, our vision was that we will make transport seamless. No one should need to own a car and still be able to get everywhere. That is the vision of Uber, right? So you have to keep thinking about what is the vision. And then therefore, if people tell Uber, why don't you do like, meal delivery? Then Uber has to think, does that flow into my idea of you should not own a car? You should be able to get a ride anytime. So if it does, then they will do it. If it doesn't make sense, then they should not do it, right? So that's how you use all of these elements. So I'm going to take a quick pause here, right? You can see the elements on. This is what a business plan is. But do you have thoughts, questions, something I can go deeper into? You can unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can like just type it into the chat window. Okay. If there's no questions, then I'll move on to the next slide. So like I said, one of the deeper or like one of the more difficult parts that people feel happens in a business plan is actually, I'd say the most difficult part of a business plan is the problem. Can you identify a problem? If you get a problem, almost everything else can be solved. Most startups fail because people think that they have found a problem that wants to be solved. वो होता नहीं है. Why? How do you know that that's true? Because अगर problem होता, then someone would pay you to solve it, you'd get money, and you would not fail. So all businesses are shut down because they're not making money. Essentially, the problem is they've not found a problem. Now, but once you found a problem, how do you actually plan it, right? So that you don't run out of cash, you don't run into trouble, you're able to pay salaries on time, you have your inventory. There are a lot of examples in India and otherwise of companies who run into cash crunch, right? आपके पास customer है, आपके पास forward का पैसा है, but you are like shutting down. Can any of you by the way tell me of a very famous Indian edtech company that's in the news for like basically having a cash flow issue right now?
Other than Byju's?
It is Byju's.
Byju's, yeah.
Yeah, because see, Byju's, what they did, right, is that they essentially forward reported all of their, correct, Atish? They forward reported all of their revenue and they spent like they would keep, like getting access to more and more cash. So a lot of the spendings they're doing on in terms of marketing, they said, oh, we spent 100, and these are made up numbers, but we spent 100 crores and we got 1,000 crores of revenue. So we're a great business. Actually, what they did was they spent 100 crores and they got revenue that in this year was only maybe like 100 crores itself. And some of the revenue of 100 crores was from people who didn't know they have to keep paying like 100 crores like in the years to come, right? So that is why. So that is where cash flow breaks down. A lot of people think that the management at Byju's just kind of like lost track of their cash flow situation. And so they kept having, and so then marketing was much more expensive than the amount of money they were making. So essentially they were endlessly burning money. So आपका जब भी एक business plan या model होता है, if you start to scale it when it is burning money, it's like burning money faster. So everyone, ये theory सबको पता है. Like I said in the previous slide, right? It's easy to Google. It's easy to talk about these things. Theory आसान है, execution बहुत मुश्किल है. You can believe me that if you raise as much money as like Byju's had raised, you are going to get very smart people out there. You're going to get like very hardworking people out there. Everyone is thinking this is my chance at becoming like a millionaire, a billionaire. So no one's doing this out of malice, right? But if you don't have like kind of clarity, you don't have the ability to get everyone like to work together, then you end up in these issues. Now at the basic level, like for seed angel, I say that a very simple Excel works fine as a financial model. What is a financial model? It's a very simple cash flow statement. It just helps us to understand how much cash will be lost or burnt. I'm sure you guys have heard some of these terms. If you're not, please let me know. But we basically want to understand how much money will be burnt before the company starts to turn cash flow positive, and it does not need to raise any money from outside to survive. And I say cash flow always, guys. I never say profit and loss, because you could be a profitable transaction, right? Like your customer could say, I will pay you $100 at the end of this year. But because you have to pay salaries for the year, you have to pay for server space for the year, you have to pay for rent for the year, you need to have cash for all 12 months before the customer pays you at the end of the 12th month and you finally make money, right? So that's why cash flow is important and not profit and loss alone. Profit and loss be important, but that's why we always talk as entrepreneurs, we always think about cash flow first. And by the way, India as a country always thinks of cash flow first. तो आपका जो किराना वाला है, वो cash flow में जीता है. वो उसको पता है कि उसके like डब्बे में कितना पैसा है, उसके दुकान में कितना माल है. वो माल 10 रुपए का खरीदता है, 12 रुपए में बेचता है, 2 रुपए से घर चलाता है. Every day in and out, that's all they do, right? So India is a very financially literate country in some ways. Cash flow हम सबको समझ में आना चाहिए and आता है culturally. So please, ये आपका super power है. Please always remember and think about cash flow. Now, things to think about when you're putting a financial model together. Again, there are tons of resources out there. How to build a simple cash flow, how to build a simple P&L. बहुत simple होता है. You just take your unit transaction and you need to understand what is your profit or loss per transaction. how many transactions will you do in a month? That's it. So your unit transaction, how many you will do in a month, that is your basic like revenue. उसके नीचे cost lines भी बहुत fixed होती हैं. It's your salary, rent, utilities, server space. All of these are like very simple things, right? So you just like write this down in a line, you put those months, and then you say month on month क्या change आएगा. That's it. You have to think about how do you create assets. ये एक extra आता है. So if you have to create a website, you'll pay someone, you'll do it yourself. There's some time put into it. You want to, actually like, let's say you're all like very, like ahead of the curve and you want to build an LLM model. You know what you need to do? You need to first buy all of that compute power. Even before you start to do anything, you will have to invest a lot of money into the compute power. Then you'll have to spend money on reaching out to clients and telling them what you do. So you hire a sales team, you hire your, like sales head, you create materials, you create a deck, you create proof of concept, you work for free for someone to show them key, what can you do? All of this is called asset creation. So you think about how much cash do you need to create these assets? How do you build up inventory? How do you build up your receivables? How do you build up like, sales materials? Now, once you have the basics in place, right, you can do like a lot of like interesting secondary analysis. Ek hota hai break even point, everyone knows about. So the minute your cash flow turns positive, thereon you are home free. But you need to think, ki agar I have spent 120 rupees getting to this point, how soon will I make 120 rupees so that I can pay those people back and start to, then wo paisa tumhara ho jata hai. That it's a company's money once you paid back the previous money, correct? So like, let's say 10 of you get together, you start a company, you put in $100. So 10 each, you put $100. You burn through like $100, right? Then you start to make money. Now, let's say you only make a rupee a year. It's going to take you like 100 years to make your money back. Yes, you're profitable. Does it make sense to do this business? Not unless it gets faster, right? So that's what we mean by payback period. Like, is this business viable? Is this going to return money to the company? Will it be useful to do? Then you think a little bit about, what kind of like unit economics do you have? So again, different industries have different kinds of unit economics, right? Agar aap software mein ho, you will have high fixed costs, but actually the price of selling one more subscription is the price of like cloud support and your support. So, and your sales support team. Typically 60 to 90% margins hote hain is industry mein. My industry, which is retail, right? It's a marketplace. So basically our unit economics is actually very brutal. So let's say, I buy at like $10, I can sell at maximum of like $11, maybe $11 and 20 paisa. That's the nature of the FMCG retail market, right? So like my margin is 10 to 12%. So you need to develop a very clear understanding how much margin will I get from like the transaction, and then what are my costs. So my cost of sales kya hai, my cost of operations kya hai, my salaries and overheads kya hai, and like how much money do I need to have for variable. For each rupee of revenue extra that I earn, usme ek variable cost hota hai, right? So if you sell shoes, every pair of shoes you sell, you'll have to pay for the carton, you'll have to pay for the marketing to find the customer, you'll have to pay for the materials for that shoe. But you take something like your brand. Maybe like 6 months ago, you did a brand exercise, you got a great logo, design, look put together. That is maybe, like let's say $100. That $100 will last you the next 2 years. So your branding is like a fixed cost, which you apportion over the amount of time it will last. And your variable cost is everything that goes into every unit. So like I said, software mein, aapka, principal engineer time, your front-end engineer time, these are all like asset creation. ये सब आपकी fixed cost में जाता है. But your server space, your cloud space, right? Your sales support stuff. So every client you bring on, you will add these costs. Every client you have to find, you have to spend something on marketing. These are variable costs. So you basically differentiate in your unit economics. This is my gross margin. These are my variable costs. And this is therefore my contribution margin at the end of it. Contribution margin समझ में आता है. अच्छा, so for every 100 rupees I sell, I'll get to keep like, let's say 50 rupees. So therefore, to make 5,000 rupees, I have to sell 100 units. Correct? So that's what you use this unit economics for. Then finally, you have to think about costs, right? What kind of trends will happen in the future? So I have a question actually, right? So a lot of you would have seen like D2C companies, aap bahut sare brands we use karte honge, a boat or like, like multiple like food and like fashion brands. So tell me, ki jo cost of customer acquisition hota hai to find people like you and to sell them clothes, do you think this cost goes up in time as the company grows larger, or does it go down in time as the company grows larger? Yeah, Diksha.
Like, I feel that initially it should be lower, but as the company maybe reaches the customer at a large scale, they will have to spend more for the some amount of time so that they get some customers, right? So I think it will be like a peak, like a reaction coordinate system. कि पहले कम है, it will increase, then it will stabilize.
That's a great answer. It's a very IIT answer, right? I see. Basically, it depends on whether customers remember you or not, right? तो अगर आपने बहुत अच्छी branding करी and you create a space in their mind, then your cost will start to go down over time. But most D2C brands today are not able to create the differentiation. Do you guys know, like, let's say 3 D2C brands in the chocolate space? Can anyone name them? Chocolate
Cadbury,
space,
Cadbury,
D2C,
Hershey's,
D2C,
Toblerone.
D2C new one, D2C new brands. Great.
Not many.
Yeah, great. Now I'll ask you, okay, do you know any global brands, MNC brands, old brands? Can you name 3 old chocolate brands?
M&M kettles, blend.
You were already naming them, right? Atish was also naming some of them. That's the point. That is how brand works. When you create a brand asset, then people know you, remember you. What that literally means is कि तुम्हें Google को पैसा नहीं देना पड़ेगा for people to search and like buy Cadbury's. तुम्हें Google को पैसा नहीं देना पड़ेगा for people to like say Bata is a shoe store, right? So that's how we think about like cost. If you make a plan, guys, and you say कि मैं marketing में पहले मैं 100 रुपए दे रहा हूँ, and as time goes on, my cost will reduce. You are wrong. You will be in trouble when your company scales. You have to think, why will the cost go down, right? So there is nothing simple in this world anymore. We all live in a very complex world. But the fundamentals are basically this, right? अगर आप एक company खोलते हो, then you need to basically have only one thing, right? What is the problem you're solving? That problem is worth solving as a for-profit company, is worth solving if someone is paying you enough money that you're not burning cash at the end of the day. That is it. That's the end of it. Of course, there are a lot of beautiful problems in this world which are not profit oriented. That's like the space of impact and non-profit. So, but we're not talking about that today. So I'll put that to the side. So for our purpose as entrepreneurs looking to start a for-profit business, you only need one thing to start a company. You should have a problem that is real. A real problem is something that people will pay you money to solve. They will pay you enough money that, at the end of the day, with your cash flow, you will be positive. Your burn will one day be zero. You will start to make money back. अगर ये नहीं है, तो ये for-profit business नहीं है. Now, of course, there are many more smaller elements, and when we talk through them. Most important element, according to me, for planning purpose is your financial and business model. Understanding how will you ask the customer to give you money, understanding how it will affect your cash needs. Okay. Correct. ABCD has said Lint. Lint is an old school brand, and it is a great example of like highly recallable brand in India. Yeah, Hardik.
So the problem, like when you are creating the financial, I will ask later. I think you will be covering it then.
Sure. No, I mean, we can go through it because after this, I want to talk about a few other concepts for fundraising. So if you have questions on financial model, we can get into it now.
So how much do we know that, like, how you are saying that profitability should be taken care of from the start only, or at least taken care that break even will be happening in some period of time? How much of that some period of time makes sense? Because many companies which started in 2015 and stuff, they predicted that it would be like break even would be happening after 10 years, and they still went on with that, and that was a perfect model. But right now in this perfect current state of what's the situation and what is the ideal number?
Sure. So when you are asking this question, right, how much time before I become financially positive? Look, so Uber took like many years, right, to become financially positive, and there was a period in between people said kabhi positive nahi hoga and usko band kar dena chahiye. It is, and so that is my belief about a company, and this is what will set entrepreneurs aside from just the triers or the people who actually are not entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs. Farak yahi hota hai. Entrepreneurs find solutions and they make things work. So different stages require different kinds of leadership and different kinds of approach. So Dara Khosrow Shahi was the right person to come in and make Uber profitable. And then the founder was the right person to build something so audacious and to change the world, right? You need both kinds to make it happen. So now as a non-theoretical thing, असलियत में जब आप ground पे जाओगे, आपको कितना time लगेगा, it does not matter. You basically need to raise enough money that you can get to the next funding round. And that's what the Indian system also did.
Makes
Now
sense.
there's a good way to do this and there's a bad way to do this, right? Bad way to do this is कि अच्छा बहुत पैसा बह रहा है system में, कुछ भी बोल करके बस like 2 million उठा लो देख लेंगे. That's not the way to do things. The way to do things is to say, अच्छा, I know that if I can demonstrate कि I have one client who likes my product and will pay me for it, I need like let's say $1.5 million, right? So then you look at and so then you like estimate, right? So there's two things you need to understand in your sector. आपका जो problem है, when you solve it, right, how long will it take you to get that solution right? Will it take you 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 14 months? So basically you think, Acha, I am at the seed stage right now. My next stage is Series A. Series A tak VCs need these kinds of proof points. They need to know the product exists and some customers are interested in it and it's a profitable unit model at scale. Normally by the यही दो तीन चीजें कोई भी अच्छा VC देखता है. So then you say, to prove these 3 points out, what is the work I need to do? How much time do I need? What is the work I need to do? Leads to team cost. How much time do I need? Leads to the month cost. That summation is how much money you need to read. So that's what's coming to also, right? Like a very
Got it.
important concept. When you're fundraising is actually need versus greed. Like let's say, you need $1.5 million to get to this proof point and raise your next tranche of money. So someone comes to you and says, okay, you need $1.5 million. I'll give you $2 million and you give me 40% of your company. What questions do you need to ask them? What is the most important question whenever we come to like VC and negotiations? What is the most important question that we all need to be thinking about?
That the large or the long-term vision that you both have for the company is sort of on the same lines. If you want to maybe build something bigger or maybe something smaller, that should align with your investor, right? Otherwise, there will be clashes.
Very true. So one, you need to have the same philosophical mindset, right? कि कितने जल्दी जाएंगे, कितना पैसा चलाएंगे. You need to be in the same, like wavelength for that. Let's say the wavelengths are the same. They've offered you, like let's say theoretical है, okay? They've offered you, you need $1.5 million. आप सब seed stage पे हो, okay? आपने friends and family से पैसा उठाया है. You raise like 100K and you give 10% of the company away. Now you come to this point and you want to raise $1.5 million. And, like now you're going to VC and VC is saying, I'll give you $2 million and I want 40% of your company. Is this a good deal or a bad deal? So I want you to think about it and answer, is it a bad deal or a good deal? And what are the factors that make something a good deal or a bad deal?
I think it is a bad deal. Reason being that first, that if we require 1.5, that is through some metrics. And when you increase that 0.5 million, it doesn't directly transcends into what the results would be increasing. So since that is not sure, we tend to get greedy as compared to that. And
Correct.
secondly, also the dip of 40% is I think a lot in one round only. It needs to be
Correct.
more successive so that there is some possibility of further rounds which the other VCs are ready to get in because they won't be able to
Correct.
valuation.
And you have got the two factors correct, right? So instinctively हमें भी पता है कि you need to think about like कि कितना ownership of the company are we giving away and do we need so much money? See what happens. You want 1.5 million. Someone says, I'll give you 2 million. What is happening? What is the catch over here? The catch is they want more of your company. They're not giving you $2 million as a grant. Whatever they're paying you, they're saying 2 million, I want 40%. So by maths, हम सब यहाँ पे maths अच्छी तरह से जानते हैं, we are all great at maths, right? If 2 million is 40% of the company, 1.5 million is a smaller amount of the company. And therefore, you will retain more ownership. Let's say you take this like 1.5 million at like whatever the reduced percentage. Your next stage is I want to raise again like let's say $1.5 million. What do you think is the ownership that you will be asked to give up at that stage? Will it be
Low,
will you have to give up more of the company or less of the company?
lesser,
Lesser. Why?
because the valuation would have been increased and there has been some time and extra post money valuation has been increased already.
Correct.
So
But
that
he's a
increase.
few more. So why is the valuation increasing?
I
Yeah,
have used that money to grow my business. I have reached the
correct.
proof point. So I can now
Correct,
raise a
Adhish. You
series.
created proof. Absolutely. That's correct. Kislev?
And how do we calculate the entire mathematical process, that how much
Sure.
of the company we want to give away?
I'll go through that, right? So VC maths is the most interesting part of this to, to some of us. This is like a maths. It's not maths actually, like multiplication. But like it's a very interesting philosophical understanding that we get into. But the point is this: $1.5 million, when you accept it now, and then 1 year later, you have proved your company out. You'll have added customers. You'll have improved unit economics. You'll have added proof points कि ये company असली है. This company will one day make money. Your company will be worth more. You will not have to give up as much of it when you raise your next round. So this is what we call need versus greed. Greed, so sometimes we think कि पैसा लेना greed है. नहीं, पैसा लेना वाला greed नहीं है. The greed is on the VC's part. The VC is always saying, they are young right now, they're risky right now, they don't have other backers right now. Let me take as much of their money as let me take as much of the company as I can. Right? And we'll talk about like the VC's mindset also. I've been a VC. We'll talk about the VC's mindset and their maths. How do they make money, right? But for most VCs at every stage, if you're a good company, they will be fighting to buy more of you. Why? Because you're cheaper today. Any good company is cheaper today than it will be tomorrow. Makes logical sense? And any confusion, then we can talk through it right now. Other folks, who are on the call, I hope सबको समझ में आ रहा है. If people want more Hindi, more English, please let me know, right? Like, I don't want to unintentionally leave someone out. All right. So then coming back to it, as I said, like it's need versus greed. You basically want to raise exactly that least amount of money, which is required to take you to the next stage. And you always build in some buffer. क्यों? Because दुनिया ऊपर नीचे जाती है. You have like variations in the sector, right? So 2015, 2020, crazy years for raising money. Like anyone was raising money with an idea. Today, go out, try to raise money. It's a very different market. So you always want to build in a buffer, yes, and that is your need. What do you need to build out the proof for the next level? It's like a video game in some ways, right? आप इस level पे हो, आपको पता है next level पे पैसा लेने के लिए आपको क्या करना है, तो उतना पैसा उठाते हो. You want to raise the least amount of money because you are giving your company away cheaply today. Always please remember this. Let's say you solve the most important problem. Most important problem, as I said, is knowing की problem क्या है. A problem which someone will pay for. Most important thing. ये आपने कर लिया. आपकी company में अच्छे bones हैं. You have the seed for success. Second thing to do, don't lose too much of the company before you get to the end. Right? So that is why they say need versus greed. Now, in reality, by the way, a good company, the founder, the team, the solution is so important that investors will give you back the company at the end so that it remains interesting to you. And I'll give you, and do you guys know which food tech company is famous? Which founder is famous for having given a lot of the company away in the beginning and then reclaimed parts of it?
Swiggy.
Actually, Swiggy had a very easy path. उन्होंने ठीक से हर time पे ठीक ही किया था.
Starbucks.
Zomato. Correct.
Zomato.
Zomato almost shut down. I remember sometime around, I think like in 2013 or so, they went through a really rough patch where they almost got shut down, right? And they gave away a lot of the company and then they raised money from InfoEdge again. And InfoEdge took a chunk of the company with them. And so, people would said, oh, why did Dipinder stick it out? Itna ye tha, wo Bain ka banda tha, wo itna smart banda tha, wo kuch bhi kar sakta tha. He could have given up. But I think, so this is where theory says ki raise the least amount of money that you can. And at some point, American theory especially will say, if it's too low ownership, then you should let it go. It doesn't make sense. Actually, like in reality, life is very nuanced. So the Zomato team stayed on, built it bigger and bigger and bigger. As they started to do better, they actually got like their company back. So investors started to give them back like itna portion, because the team was magic. If the team, after creating the success, wanted to leave, the investors would be stuck with the company jo badhta nahi. So once you prove your worth, the investors started to give that money, kind of like they funneled parts of it back. And so therefore now, the Zomato employees and like Dipinder Goyal are like doing very well for themselves. So theory, nuance, reality. So, I'm just trying to give you guys like kind of like the basic elements, but these are all things that as you keep going through life, you will keep talking to mentors, you'll keep talking to your peers, your situation will be different. But yeah, fundamentals. Problem is a problem if someone pays you to solve it. Raise the least amount of money that you can because you're cheap at that point. If you can't raise money, you will do whatever you have to keep your company alive. And because you're all smart people, you're all like great people, that value will come back to you when you solve it, right? So as long आप में clarity है कि ये problem असली है, लोग इसके लिए पैसा देंगे. आज by the way हम सब लोग ₹5 दे रहे हैं हर Zomato के order पे, right? No one would have believed it like 6 years ago. ₹6 just for the platform, nothing to do with the food you're getting. But if people have belief, then they can overcome almost anything. So that kind of like, like sums up for me the business plan, the basic elements, things to think through. I can take questions now, and then like we'll come to the end. There's a great question asked, which is, how do we think about the maths? Okay, so like, this is a question almost everyone always asks me. How do you decide what is the value of a company? Right, so that's the last section that we'll come to. How do we decide what is the value of a company at different stages? But before we run into that, any questions? And folks, speak up. I always say your voice is a tool. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Yeah, Kisle.
And like you mentioned that Zomato was going through a rough patch and they were about to close. What are the factors that a company sees, or what are the signs that they see, and they decide that it is time now that we should call it off? For example, front row closed as well. So
correct. Yeah, so I think, mostly all startups shut down when the founders can't raise more money. In India, especially, market is our market is shallow and immature. There are money markets in the world where, like if you're not doing well, you try to see, can you sell yourself to someone else? And you're very like kind of like rigorous about like what value you're creating. In India, quite often, we're like कि अपना salary नहीं लेंगे, खाना नहीं खाएंगे, but company को on रखेंगे. We have a different mindset sometimes. But so again, like, like that said, typically companies shut down when two things happen. There is a common belief. Oh, wow. Okay. I triggered the celebrations. Okay. But there's a common belief in all the owners of the company that this company cannot make money in the future. That's when the company shuts down, right? If you all put like $10 into a company and, at some point you realize that if I put $5 in each, then maybe in the next 4 years, it will start to make money. So it's that risk evaluation. Do you believe really that 4 years later, you will be able to make your money back? If all of you agree, then of course the company will go on. But there is literally a mathematical point. 4 साल चलाने के लिए जो पैसा चाहिए, अगर not enough of you are convinced कि वो जो 4 साल का पैसा है, you can't जुगाड़ो that. अगर वो नहीं मिल पाता है, if you can't, put that money together that you need to get to the next proof point, that's when a company shuts down. So when enough of the owners of a company lose faith and they refuse to fund it such that you can't get to the next proof point, that's when a company shuts down. So what is the difference between a Zomato and a front row? Essentially, in front row, enough of the owners felt that we will not be able to get to the next proof point, or we don't have enough money to get to the next proof point. So like I said, there are two things. एक होता है आपका, belief in the problem. Do you think you're solving a real problem, that belief, right? And second is the amount of money required to demonstrate that belief with the proof. So either one of these, if any of these shut down, that's when you shut your company. So in front row, one of these two things must have happened. Either the owners of the company, enough of the owners of the company felt this is not a real problem, or enough of the owners of the company felt that we need too much money and it's too risky to solve this problem. And so that's when you shut down. Zomato, again, like, I think it was very evident from the way the team was set up that they wanted to go on at all costs. And so they found the money, they risked their ownership, right? They said, chalo, hum kam kamaenge, but ye problem ko solve karenge, and ye problem ek din solve hoga. So their belief was very strong. So they got money enough to get to the next stage. And they kept getting enough money to get to the next stage, and that's why they survived so far. This is not mathematics and planning. This is not it's not like a natural phenomena. ये बस हुआ नहीं है, ये किया गया है. This team has made that reality happen. And so you guys have to like differentiate that. As entrepreneurs, you don't, so in as entrepreneurs, you're not like light ka speed ye hai, yahi ho sakta hai. As entrepreneurs, you are forcing reality to fit what you want to do, right? So if you have the belief and your clear eyesight, you should not delude yourself. But if you have the clarity of mind, you will force the solution to exist. You can't force a problem to exist, guys. You can force a solution to exist. So did I answer your question? Or like, again, like if it was not clear, happy to like talk through the logic.
Yes,
And
ma'am,
if
it's
you're
clear.
okay, and if you and then again at this point, it's always fun to look at other startups and kind of like say what happened over here, what did not happen over here. So any startup, if you guys are curious about, I'm happy to talk through it. That what happened at the startup. Yeah, Utkarsh said grit is needed. That's correct. I think grit and resilience, the most important thing that you need if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Well, I
Ma'am, I
can
had a
elaborate.
question.
Sorry.
Sure, go on.
Now, if there's a problem which some companies are working to solve that problem,
Right.
and you want to solve the same problem. For example,
Correct.
cab systems, Uber and Ola existed,
Yeah,
and Rapido came into the picture.
correct.
So, how do you judge yourself that if you want to solve the same problem,
Yeah.
how do you get that self-belief that you can solve it, and while other companies are in a better position?
Correct. I think this is a good question to ask, right? Like, so my own sector, right, which is FMCG distribution, a lot of people are like, distribution is a solved problem. India में कहीं पे भी जाओ तो Maggi, Vim, Pond's Dream Flower Talc कहीं पे भी मिल जाता है, right? And so then like, is there even need for another wholesaler or like distributor in India? And I think like my answer was basically that there are two models of distribution in India, and one of them basically like leaves a lot to be desired. So agar aap, if any of you come from smaller towns and villages, you will know that distribution is not the same through India. जो चीजें आपको दिल्ली में मिलती हैं वही चीजें आपको towns and villages में नहीं मिलता है. And that is not because people can't afford it or people don't want it. E-commerce demonstrated that people everywhere want a lot more things than they're getting access to. So we also believe that we got some of this proof point. We put up a very bad site and we put up our prices and we went out and we found customers a lot. Like, we used to spend our time going on WhatsApp groups of resellers and like sending their catalogs to them, like, like just like brute forcing hundreds and hundreds of like, catalog shares. And then we got response back. People were buying from us. So you have to have akal to look at something, to understand system kya chal raha hai, okay, and recognize problem kya hai. तो like यहाँ पे अकल की बात ये है कि Rapido ने बोला, अच्छा, there is an Uber and Ola over here. Is there place for a third person? Why? More than Rapido, I would say the really interesting player is Namma Yatri in Bangalore. Namma Yatri looked at like this system and they said, अच्छा, एक Uber है, which is like, it's a great user experience. And एक Ola hai, which is like it's a decent user experience, but it seems to be like, like very low quality. Like people, they don't care if like, like the driver is mean or rude to us. So they were differentiating along customer experience. And by the way, Uber is great for drivers also. And Ola is like bad for drivers also. So it's not about ki drivers ko, zyada acha ya buda kar rahe hain do companies. No, that's not it. Companies which are good at user experience are good on both sides usually. So but what is the difference? Uber always tends to be higher priced, right? It is like, it's kind of safer, it's a bit more like detail oriented, and therefore it tends to be a little bit higher priced. And then like Ola uski thoda niche hai, to Ola ke sare jo product features hain, they're all around like economy. So like Ola is like basically going to offer you 4 classes of cars. Uber is saying 2 classes hain, right? So now why is Ola doing this differentiation कि एक का 8 रुपए है, एक का 10 रुपए है, एक का 12 रुपए है. Uber is saying सबका 12 रुपए है और एक 14 रुपए वाला भी होता है, right? So that's how Uber and Ola think. Now in this crowded market, Namma Yatri came in and said, you know what is the most annoying thing? बारिश हो रही होती है and मैं 200 रुपए एक्स्ट्रा देने को तैयार हूँ ताकि मैं घर पहुंच जाऊं and मेरे को अलाउ नहीं कर रहा है कोई. That's what Namma Yatri came in and said, I will allow you to offer more to the driver and the driver can accept or not accept this. That was a breakthrough. Now Namma Yatri did a lot of other things also differently. वो उनका like I said, pricing models are very interesting. ओला एंड उबर से जितने राइड्स आप करते हो उसके हिसाब से आपको कुछ कैलकुलेशन करके आपको एक इंसेंटिव मिलता है एंड आपको पर राइड का एक ट्रांजैक्शन फी मिलता है. Namma Yatri is saying all of this is yours, you pay me $30 every time. They changed it. They said हम सॉफ्टवेयर हैं, तुम हमें सॉफ्टवेयर का पैसा दो. And it is working, right? So people said India में no one will ever pay like software का subscription पैसा. Namma Yatri said You pay me 30 bucks to stay on this platform. Rehna raho, nahi rehna jao. And people are paying and it's working. So again, Namayat is doing a lot of things differently. So whenever you start a company now, you will find that infinite levers to build a different experience for your customers. But the most important thing is you look at the problem with Akal. Akal, like what is the insight here? Customer is willing to pay more, right? And so if I can draw this customer away from Ola and Uber and get their cash, then I can exist as a company. Now, if you are the first runner, just existing, अगर आप Cadbury's हो, दुनिया में chocolate नहीं है famous, just existing as a chocolate seller is enough. But then everyone knows Cadbury selling chocolate. उसके बाद to stand out, you have to be a Lindt. You have to say, I'm fine chocolate. When you eat me, I'm better than, I'm better than other chocolate. And then like someone has to say, I am like, okay, peanuts. I am like, like energy bar. Another one is saying, if you like rock music, you should only eat this chocolate. So people pay on many different parts, right? But ultimately, you have to understand what will make a customer buy you. There is a problem that you're solving. It could be the customer wants to feel very cool when they're eating chocolates. If that problem is real, then your rock and roll chocolate will do well. If that problem is not real, your rock and roll chocolate will not do well. Right? So to that question, if there are companies already existing in the field you want to get into, the question you have to ask yourself is, what do I need to do to get a customer away from them? What problem of the customer is not being solved? And by the way, most companies do this. Most of this world, the problems are being solved. Some problems are not being solved well enough for some people. And that's where you get your wedge. So this is like the very famous theory of innovation. It's like, like there is a solution and that solution is like very customized to one set of customers and it's making a lot of people unsatisfied. Like ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, Oracle hai, SAP hai, they're huge, expensive, and only big companies can afford them. So someone like a Zoho, a Freshdesk, a Zendesk, they all came in, they broke up parts of the ERP and they said, this for cheap, this for small, this for small, marketing made this for small, right? They created an entire sector. That's called SMB tech today. So you can look at a problem or a set of competitors and say, okay, you know what? There are 4 people in this already, but this customer has this problem which is not being solved by any of these people. I say that is where you get your entry point. If you can't identify a customer and the problem point, you should probably not do it. Did that answer the question? Yeah, Atish.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Alright.
like if I would ask about your particular company, what do you do exactly? Like you
Yeah.
buy from big brands and you sell to local kirana stores, or you connect merchant to merchant?
Right. So we solve 2 problems, right? So we buy from all kinds of brands and we sell to general trade retailers in tier 2, tier 3 India. The first problem we solve is the problem of logistics and warehousing a cost. The further away from a factory that you have to sell a good, the more expensive it gets, right? So a lot of like goods in India just get sold in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengal markets. And uske beyond, people don't know how it gets to Lucknow, how it gets to Begusarai and so on, but it gets more and more expensive. So, and there are a lot of people in the chain, right? And sometimes the goods go to A, then B, then C. It should just go from A to C. So one thing we do is we make the logistics and warehousing cost the least possible to sell to these companies. Second, and this is the more interesting problem we solve. Second problem we solve is retailers and wholesalers only sell fast moving goods because their business model is not transactions. Their business model is, I have 10 bucks. If I can sell it for 12 rupees, I earn 2 bucks. But if I can sell it for 2 rupees every 2 days in a month from 10 rupees, how much do I make? You make 15 into 2 rupees. So 10 rupees से आप 30 रुपए बना सकते हो. The amount of money you make is a function of the turns. So wholesale is a turns business. Now, what does it logically mean? A turns business reduces inventory and reduces risk taking. So we came in and we said there is enough consumer appetite in these tier 2 and 3 towns. लोगों को यार like 5 flavor के chips चाहिए, उनको नए chocolates चाहिए, उनको 10 kind की shampoos चाहिए. I just have to figure out the maths to place the right number of products near the right number of customers that I make money. So that's kind of like the maths problem I end up solving. I solve it better than like the traditional wholesalers. I solve it better than a lot of other startups. And that's why I'm profitable and I'm still existing in this market. There are a lot of people who have like shut down in this market. Because you solved this maths problem correctly so far, we are still standing and we're doing well.
Amazing.
I know that we're up on like almost the end of our time also, right? So if there are any questions on this, I can take them. I think Utkarsh has a question. We can come to this in the end, right? Like we can discuss specific ideas at the end. I'll quickly walk us through how VCs think. So VC economics is like a very core concept, right? So like I said, is talk में आप बस 3 चीजें ले जाओ अपने दिमाग में. Just remember 3 things. One, you must solve a real problem. A real problem is something someone will pay money to get solved. Okay? अगर कोई पैसे दे रहा है and it's enough to run a company, that's a real problem to solve. 2, you should make sure that you are like raising the right amount of like cash that is required to get to cash flow positiveness, right? And 3, how much of a company do you give away to raise that amount of money? Now, this is where VC economics are. VCs are also a business. They are in the business of lending money at very high rates. You all have heard of home loans.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you think is like a typical home loan interest rate?
8 to
7%.
Depends आप कौन हो, आपकी credit history क्या है. But you know 8% से लेकर के if you're a small, you know, like अगर आप like small housing finance use करते हो, you know, basically 5 लाख से कम का घर है, आपके पास credit history नहीं है, then you might be as much as 18%. Okay, so that's very high, 18% a year. Now, can you tell me like how much is a VC expected you will pay them for every year that you have the money? The answer is in the slide, by the way.
20-50 से ज़्यादा 25-50.
Correct. They expect कि हर साल you should pay me 25 to 50% of the principal amount as interest. That's when a VC is successful. When they get this amount of interest back, that is when you have a successful VC. You take VCs like Sequoia, year on year for years, they have charged people 30 to 45% interest. They're making that kind of money. So when you think about like VC economics, you have to understand it's a finance ka business. Literally what happens is कि वो आपके सामने बैठता है and देखता है, will your company have value in the future? आज आप जो भी बना रहे हो, future में जाके, so one day evaluate the risk, right? Is the problem real? Is the solution good? Are you the right person to build that solution? Is there really a need for that like solution today? They'll evaluate all that. Then they'll say, 5 years from now, this company will be worth like, let's say, $100. At that time, if I own half the company, I'll get $50. So today, I can spend up to X amount of money to acquire this company. Right? So this is a maths problem. So every year, right, the value of the company, you discount it by time. $100 in 5 years is not as valuable as $100 now. So $100 in 5 years is basically the time value of money. So you basically take that back. And once you have finished, you know, like calculating what is the time value of the company, that's when you say, okay, I'm a VC. I need to make sure I'm making money. Therefore, today I need 30% of a company for this to make sense for me. A company that is going to be valued 200 rupees in 5 years, they will say, okay, I only need 15% of a company. A company is going to be valued 400 rupees. They'll say, again, like the number changes based on what the future value of a company is, right? So that is why you, and again, you have to like see, like it all breaks down into numbers. VCs have 1 in 100 companies that work out as a huge deal for them. 10 to 15, this is the US power law, right? 10 to 15 that like either medium return, the rest all sink, they all go to zero. So basically US like VC has worked out, I need to ask for this amount of company at each stage. If you Google this, you'll find that, you know, there's like well established for a company sector stage, there will be a market norm key. What is the valuation of the company? What is the ownership that you require? Why? You need to have this ownership in the future for this deal to make sense to them. So that's it. It's just maths at the end of the day. Okay. So that's it from my side. I can take quick questions. I think, you know, if you want to talk about a specific business idea, I'll suggest you reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can connect over there.
Ma'am, so I actually wanted to ask you about your Harvard experience and also how it helped you in your journey as an entrepreneur.
Sure. That's Aghamarsh, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So like again, like Harvard was beautiful. I loved it. You know, Harvard is also need blind, right? So they basically they charge you what you can afford to pay. they ask you to give the पूरा काला चिट्ठा, आपके पास क्या asset है, क्या salaries है, क्या कमा रहे हो, किससे शादी की हुई है, उसके पास कितना पैसा है. Then they say, okay, you only have this much money, you pay me this much. So when I went to Harvard, I paid like a certain fee. My friends who went from like better companies who earned more money, they had to pay a higher fee. So Harvard kind of like, again is need blind. So so again, I was able to go there without worrying too much about like the cash component. It's of course, it's a great label to have. But I essentially wanted to make sure that I could do anything I wanted to in the world. And so for me, that meant that I should get like a safety net. Once I went to Harvard, I realized that the really great people in Harvard were ones who did not worry about safety nets. So, my plan before going to Harvard was, acha, I'll go there, I'll get like this extra, validation. Then I will come back, I will work in a fund. Then 10 years later, when I'm very established and I've understood a lot about all of these industries, then I'll start my own company. I think I went to Harvard and met so many ambitious, smart, risk-taking people. And I realized, oh, what, I can take risk today. And that's because Harvard is always very they drive great clarity of mind. They ask the question I asked myself, does money and stability give me the most happiness? And I realized there's a level. I'd reached that level. So I think, oh, now money is not the most important thing in my life. Now something else is like more meaningful, and therefore I could like go after it. So actually Harvard changed my mind about how I will lead my life. And so I came back, I started off much earlier. Really loved the process, and I'm very grateful to the people I found in Harvard, the mindset change I had in Harvard, and so on. So Harvard is all great places. You find great people around you. That's the big takeaway. And you are all in IIT right now. You're already in a beautiful place where you will meet like the people. Like in my batch, the founder of Misho was around. In my batch, the founder of Shadowfax was around. In my batch, there were like 10 people who are contributing to like research in like various very important places. So there are like great people walking around you, right? So like I think that's the exciting thing about places like Harvard and IIT. You meet really smart, committed, motivated, ambitious people, and so you should take advantage of that. And that's what I did. I took advantage in IIT and I took advantage in Harvard.
Especially the famous case study discussions which happen in Harvard. Can you explain more about that? Like, I think that is the standout for me.
Yeah, I think Harvard basically, and you'd have seen, right? Like my style also over here was like trying to get you guys to talk to me and engage with me. Harvard believes that you don't learn from like reading things or like writing things. They believe you learn really by standing up for something, right? By putting your name on it. So case study method, basically it's like सारा काम करो, सारा maths पहले करो, सारे answers पहले सोच लो. फिर classroom में आकर के you have to put your point forward. So it's articulation of the problem and defend it. And there's like 90 other smart people picking at your idea. Is this correct? This is not correct. And you learn to think through very deeply, and you learn to take criticism and feedback in a positive way. And so case study method is about deep, rigorous thinking, articulation, and defending that articulation over time.
Thank you.
Ma'am, one more small question I wanted to ask was like, my father keeps telling me that, you have to work for a few years and then with that experience, you need to go and start something of your own because it gives you an edge and you get a more understanding about how an organization works. So I just wanted to ask you about how, working in Bain helped you in some sense in your journey.
Working in Bain helped me understand what I don't like to do, right? So like we all have our own like personalities, and we all know what we are good at and not good at. And some things you do and you realize you're not good at them. Something you do, you realize you are good at them and you still don't like them. So I didn't learn anything much from Bain. I learned to be soft and presentable. Like wo mushkil nahi hai. So yeah, but yeah, I think your dad is correct that look, today the startup market is so mature that you need to have deep expertise in something to be able to win at it. So what is your right to win? That's why I keep saying that. So pehla problem asli hai ki nahi hai. If you understand enough about the problem ki asli hai ki nahi hai, you probably must already be an expert at it, right? So to take real world gaming, as young people, you're probably much better experts at it than older people will be. So different sectors have different things, but yes, deep immersion, a lot of experience, talking to thousands of people in that field, this is all helpful always. So whatever is the company you want to start, Agamash, whatever is the problem you want to solve, do you have a lot of experience and understanding of that? If you are a deep technical founder, you don't need to know how people are. Your technical expertise will carry you through. But if you're not a technical founder, if you're the people strategy person, then you need to spend time managing people. You need to spend time putting your strategy out there, getting beaten in the market, learning how it reacts, standing up again and going out. So the question you have to ask yourself is the problem I'm trying to solve. For that solution, what is my right to win? And how do I strengthen that right to win? Will going and working for a few more years strengthen my right to win, or will it weaken it? Akshat, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, I'm also working on a deep tech startup that maybe I could discuss with you later privately.
Yeah, you can DM
So
me on LinkedIn, and then
yeah,
I'm Shruti Pai, SHRUTIPY at the end of LinkedIn, and so you can find me there.
so we started with it in our second semester, and we basically got motivated by a YC article about how cutting down simulations could save us costs. In your time at Harvard, you must have come across various YC alums.
Right.
How are those people like, and how do they get into YC?
Yeah, and I think like YC, like all institutions, YC has a range of people. But YC is very good at making sure that their alums do well. So again, IITians are also good at this. Jaise ki you are from IIT Delhi, you call up a senior, you ask them, hey, I've built a solution. Can you tell me if it's good or not? And if that person is an expert at that area, they will give you the valuable time and help you problem solve it. If you're from Harvard and you go to another Harvard alum and say, can you help me with connecting to this VC? They'll immediately connect you, right? YC is like that. So if you get into YC, the YC people will assess your idea. They'll tell you what is right and wrong and bad and good with it. You'll meet other smart people around you. Like I said, smart people, jahan pe bhi you can find them, it's good, right? But you will pay a lot for that by going to YC. Right? So YC has a very high fee that they take for the access to this network. And now YC has 400, 450 companies in the cohort. YC's made a lot of money over time. A lot of the leaders have changed and they're doing other things. The question you need to ask yourself is YC today great or is something else great? Only you can decide that for yourself, that if you're paying this price, will you get enough out of it? But YC alums are fantastic. Being part of the community is good. Will it be good enough for you? Something you need to decide for yourself.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right? Any other questions?
Ma'am, let's say a person has an idea and he or she wants to work on that project or on that startup. What questions do we need to ask ourselves? Let's, for example, a student is in the third year of his or her college. So what questions that student must ask? Or if a person is just graduating from college, so what questions that person must ask? So
if you are ever working on a company, you must always ask yourself that first very important question. What is that question? I've talked about it throughout this talk. What is the most important question to ask yourself if you're starting a company?
Is this problem real?
Correct. And how do you know a problem is real? Isle, do you want to just take a crack at it? How do you know a problem is real?
if it's paying you back enough amount of money, if you're making profit at the end of the day, then
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So theory aapko pata hai, right? Now, if you're a student in third year or a student in fourth year, what you will do is basically very simple. You will look at your alternatives. I am going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say company will make money. Okay. Problem asli hai, company will make money. Question to ask yourself is, that's a risk weighted outcome. If you take up a job, you will get X kind of lifestyle, X kind of money. Is that something you're willing to give up to get this risk weighted outcome? And remember, money is not everything to everyone. And different people have different support structures. So for me, when I graduated, as I said, I'm from middle class family. I didn't have any support structures, so it's not like, so for me, money was very important. That's why consulting was very important and VC was very important. I was like, मेरे को पैसा कमाना है. And मैं जाके पैसा कमाया. Then I was like, okay, अब मैंने पैसा कमा लिया है. Now I'm stable in life. अब मुझे अपने लिए काम करना है, अपने लिए wealth बनाना है. So then I was like, okay, I will go and and this is post Harvard after being pushed by my peers. So then I was like, अच्छा, अब मैं risk लूंगी. And risk भी क्या है? I have a fairly decent, India is a very unequal country. आप बहुत कम पैसे में बहुत अच्छी life जीते हो. So again, be very realistic with yourself. What is making you happy? You will figure out that answer from there. But yeah, most important thing, always, please, is your problem real? Will someone pay you for it? Right? अगर वो solve करोगे, तो will someone pay you enough money that you can stay alive on it? Yeah, Akshat.
Could you elaborate on if someone is interested in working in VC firms, how do they break into it? Do they use referrals or is there another way?
Hey, sorry, Akshat. I had to talk to someone else. Can you repeat your question? And sorry, this will be my last question. Happy to meet people on LinkedIn and take it up from there. Your question again?
I was asking, say if someone is interested in working with VC firms,
Mhm.
is it how easy, how difficult is it to break in? And do they only take people in from referrals, or what is usually followed?
No, I mean, like, there's a lot of VCs in India now. It's very easy to get in, like from the background that you're all in. They're looking for people who will do a lot of hard work, who will have the ability to source companies. Maths aani chahiye. You should be able to assess a problem and an idea, right? A lot of people go to like the typical consulting firms and then they get picked up from there, or they go to IB and they go from there. So if you start to reach out, by the way, to like, like VC partners and offer to like work with them on something, right? Like, so for example, Sajid Pai is always talking about like theory of India. He's always talking about building your own network. If you can demonstrate to them, I can bring you a flow of like deals from students or from like early entrepreneurs or from the IIT network, you can prove that you understand what their problems are and you want to solve it. You can get in from anywhere. बट द ट्रेडिशनल पाथ, द इजी पाथ इज यहाँ से कंसल्टिंग जाओ, यहाँ से आईबी जाओ, यहाँ से किसी मैथ्स या आर्टिकुलेशन ओरिएंटेड जगह जाओ, वहां से यू गो एंड यू इंटरव्यू. एवरी ईयर दे टेक पीपल इन, राइट? इट्स लाइक पहले साल रिक्रूटमेंट, लाइक लाइक आपका कैंपस से इन जगह होता है, फिर उसके बाद उन जगहों से ये वीसी का रिक्रूटमेंट होता है.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
All right. Sorry, folks, I need to drop off now. It was really great catching up with everyone. I'm on LinkedIn, as I said. Happy to meet over there and answer further questions.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. It was a really insightful session. We loved it. Thank you. And thanks for making it so interactive. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Hardik. Thanks, everyone, for attending. It was great to talk to all of you. Bye.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was fun. Thank you. बढ़िया पार्टिसिपेशन थी गाइस, इसलिए और वो और भी अच्छा लगा. टेक केयर गाइस, बाय बाय.